If you are listening to this episode the week it's published, that would be the week of April 22nd, and you are planning on attending the spring High Point Market. Lucky you. You are about to hear from Victoria Holly, founder of her eponymous firm and one of this year's style spotters at High Point Market, the spring 2025 edition. What does it mean to spot style, differentiate emerging style from trend, and further differentiate trend from trendy, being authentic and staying on point? Trendy. Ugh. Something that can be trending and have lasting impact on design. It's possible, probable, happens all the time. But that separation of lasting impact versus ephemeral interest has been dogging the industry for quite some time. Victoria and I chop this up a little bit. We talk about this in detail, as well as how she prepares for a show like High Point Market and what conversations she will be having as it relates to supply chain, pricing, tariffs, and potential brand partnerships. What is she hoping to get from the event this year? The following is a masterclass on event prep, a conversation that was a joy in which to participate, and that I am incredibly proud to share with you, in the hopes that you can prep if this is the time you're heading out to High Point, or if perhaps fall might be your first time out to North Carolina for this event. This conversation is absolutely jammed with actionable ideas for design talent at every level, because Victoria knows her industry. She knows it well. It is clear that she has studied her craft and knows how she wants that knowledge and insight to serve her. An idea that we don't talk about nearly enough, but we do today. And you are going to hear it all over the next hour. The most important word in the design industry today is service. Product, incredibly important. Price, important. Selection, incredibly important. But stellar service is the premier idea that can make all the difference in the success of any project. This is how design professionals like you demand great service for your projects. And you get your favorite brands in one place with expert, knowledgeable, and non-commissioned professionals to help you specify the right product for each of your projects and get the best price. Non-commissioned, that is incredibly important. And at Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, that means their only incentive is your satisfaction. Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, has just that with over 60 years of service in Southern California. Pacific Sales is your destination for exploration, advice, inspiration, all the best brands, great prices, the best in the industry when it comes to service, and you know it's reliable. You know that you are going to get predictable results, reliable results every time. And now you have the Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home team to help you with their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade program unlike any you've ever experienced before. Earn 3% in Best Buy e-gift cards or 2.5% in a reward check for every qualified and delivered sale, in addition to special trade pricing, exclusive offers, access to exclusive special events, and so much more that I can't even begin to try and list it all here. And here's the cherry on top. Access to exclusive builder trade incentives from top brands and the stellar service you deserve from a company that has been serving the industry for over 60 years. Now, terms and conditions apply to the Pro Rewards program and builder trade incentives. So visit a Pacific Sales expert at a showroom today for full details and learn how you can unlock additional savings and benefits. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best of the best. Visit Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home today and elevate your projects to new heights. It's funny because prior to hitting the little red button, we're talking about preparation for a lot of things. And I have so much to talk to you about today. It's crazy. So you're at a photo shoot today. Mm-hmm. Recently completed project. Yes? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
When you do a photo shoot, first of all, one, do you shoot every project you complete? And two, do you style every project prior to the photo shoot, or are there sometimes where, or do you just do you shoot it as designed?
Yeah, so we always style. We don't shoot every project, mostly because one, for editorial, right, you need kitchen, bathroom, living room, you need a full set. And most projects that's the case, but not always, right? I have projects I've worked with for 10 years where we hop in and we hop out and um, whatever it is. And so we're and also makes sense editorial, what's going to be the right fit. We really focus on like tailoring authentic designs for each client. And so that works for each client, might not work editorially, you know? And then we style each one just because people live in their homes ultimately. And for example, the home we're shooting today, they have two young children. So yesterday, my team came in and like moved all the toys out of the way and all the shampoo and the stuff in the bathrooms. And we like pre-take the photos of how everything was, take it all out, hide it somewhere and then come in, with different objects and different bedding and things like that. Because, you know, even the way I live in my home isn't editorial every day. So we always do style it.
It's such an interesting idea. Um, I wind up speaking with a lot of designers who don't necessarily have an editorial perspective, and I feel like nowadays, as a creative, as a designer, you have to have your own editorial perspective because the work you do winds up on the website. It defines who you are in the eyes of new clients and prospective clients. It defines who you are in the minds of journalists like me or contributing editors at the trade publications. It defines who you are. And as we're going to get into in a little bit, you as a style spotter at High Point Market this year, tell me about your editorial perspective. Tell me, do you think about the work that you do as an editorial representation of who you are and what the firm does?
Yes and no. This is a tricky one for me because, and I've dealt with this with a lot of PR perspectives and teams over the years. A lot of designers have a look, right? And that's their designated look. And throughout the years, I've been kind of pushed to be like, you need to define the Victoria Holly look. And especially if you want to do branding partnerships or, furniture design, there has to be a Victoria Holly look. And it's something I'm still struggling with today. Because I live and breathe creating homes for my clients and a little bit of what they want, but with my spin on it. And really, every project is so drastically different. And you can see that in our work. It's like completely different. There's no project that is even remotely the same or that there's a consistent look to it. And so I'm always caught in between, you know, am I going to be the brand and what is my brand versus what do I truly love to do each day, which is just create unique homes for my clients. And why I got into this, right, was just, I didn't have the best background growing out, and I wanted to create homes for people and make sure that they had the best possible places that really suited them. Because we've all come from different places and had different upbringings, and we all want to make home our place. And so from an editorial perspective, obviously, everyone loves press, and it's so exciting to be recognized and honored, and to, see your work, live and breathe past just the homes of your clients. But, um, you know, can I do that successfully while each project is different? And maybe there isn't always a consistent theme, and is that okay? And I've kind of I'm reaching, I'm 35 now, so I'm beginning to reach, not yet, but soon, like, the midpoint of my career. and, looking up to, retirement and ultimately what I want out of life. And, I've kind of made the hard decision that as of today, right now, you know, I like to do each project differently, and that may impact press or branding opportunities. Um, but I'm okay with that because it's what I love to do. That could change in 2 years. And I'm still always working on the back burner. I have like a secret Pinterest board that's like Victoria Holly brand. And I just add things to it as I see that I'm like, that I identify with visually so that I can begin to craft what is the Victoria Holly look apart from all these individualized projects. Um, and then, with editorial too, it's such an amazing opportunity to also, from my standpoint, take a look at past projects and see, what would I've done differently now that, this project specifically, it's a year later. And, not that I would have done things differently, but obviously trends are changing so rapidly with Pinterest and Instagram, right? And so you're constantly being shown new images and new ideas and new ways of doing things. And so you always are looking back at a project like, wow, that was beautiful. But if I were to do that today, how would I do things? Or in, 10 years, how would that be different in, the landscape of design? So um, I think it's a wonderful thing, but it also pushes you to look back at your own work and your own progress in the public eye.
You are listening to my conversation with Victoria Holly. We'll be right back. At the highest level of design, the absolute best specifying designers, architects, landscape designers are all highly focused on the technology and performance of products and materials today. You have to, because the products you specify for your projects have to perform and they have to last. That's one of the reasons why I am so proud to be working with TimberTech. Their focus on the technical renaissance of synthetic decking is literally changing the conversation about innovation and performance. It pulls focus on 3 priorities homeowners have and expect from the products their designers and architects specify for their luxury projects. 1. Aesthetics must match the overall design and fit visually. 2. Durability and maintenance. I've told you about my board flipping stories from my own wood decks. Clients not only want beauty, but they want ease of use, and they want it to last for decades. 3. Sustainably made. Clients are more conscious of the environment now, and they want the same of their materials. TimberTech hits each one of these elements with a product that not only meets expectations, they exceed them. TimberTech makes a synthetic decking that looks just like wood, color and embossed wood grain for a natural appearance. Their composite decking is technologically superior, as it has been created to last for decades, and it's manufactured with up to 85% recycled material. Their advanced PVC, vintage, and landmark collections have a Class A flame spread rating, making these products an amazing choice for wildfire-prone areas, which unfortunately continues to grow on the risk map. Check the show notes for more information about this and to find the nearest showroom or lumberyard where you can find TimberTech, or you can check them out directly, timbertech.com. The Design Hardware Showroom is a space where specifiers can go and find an incredible selection of high-end faucets, luxury tile, natural stone, wood floors, and bespoke hardware, and so much more. Select products are presented in a holistic manner, strategically arranged to stimulate creativity and transition your vision from the conceptual stage to a fully realized space. You will find everything you're looking for, even the products by brands you didn't know you didn't know. Surprise and delight. Am I right? All under one roof on 3rd Street in Los Angeles, just up the street from the Grove. Conveniently located, free parking available. Stop by to find inspiration, collect samples, get expert advice, and tackle everything on your specification list all in one place. Visit them online at designhardware.com, at Design Hardware and Flooring on the socials, or in the real world, 6053 West 3rd Street in Los Angeles. Oh my goodness, there is so much to unpack here. There is so much to unpack. Let me start with this. The idea that a designer has to have a signature look, and getting the input from others that you have to have a signature look. It's funny. When I first started the podcast, and it's probably for those listening, it's probably been a while since you've heard me say this, but I tend to say things over and over. Um, I would ask a question of designers that I had on, back in 2013, 2014. And the question was, so tell me about your signature style, or, how does your signature style manifest itself in your work? It's not that it's a stupid question. It's that, as I had learned over time, it was a pedestrian question. It was just such a basic question. One should know that the work you do as a designer has to be reflective of the clients that have hired you to do the work. At the same time, the clients that hire you to do the work most likely are hiring you because of your style that they see on your website. So, as an editorial publisher of the creative from the work that you do, it manifests itself in your portfolio.
Mhm.
Then I spoke to Bunny Williams a few years later, and she said, I don't want someone to know, and I'm paraphrasing, but she said, I don't necessarily want someone to know when they walk into a room that this was a Bunny Williams design,
Mhm.
just that they love it and that it speaks to them and speaks about them. How do you navigate? It's a slippery slope, and it's this authenticity, being authentic to yourself as a creative and as a designer, honoring your backstory as it relates to the work and creating that way, versus this push and pull and this tugging in all these different directions to follow trends in a certain way so that it winds up manifesting itself in your work. How do you maintain authenticity and still move the branding needle forward?
Yeah. I think for me, it goes back to my roots in design, which, I had a much older father. He was born in 1925, and he's no longer here, but he was into antiques collecting and art dealing and arts collecting. And so from a very young age, it was just me and him, and he would bring me to Christie's auctions, Sotheby's auctions. That was kind of, he had just me, and we just kind of went around New York or went to, Europe, wherever it was. He was retired, and we just, went to different things. And I was just 4 and 5, and I just went along with it. And so that was kind of how my design understanding started, and how I began to, if you're 5 and you're bored in a showroom and you're a little girl, so you're not going to cause too much trouble, as opposed to my son now, who could never be in an auction site. You begin to focus on the details. Oh, look at the nail heads on this like 1700 settee. Like I'll just stare at that for 2 hours on my dad's. But so you begin to focus on those details. And I always say that boredom is kind of the best way to gain intelligence, right? Because, that's how it's been for all of civilization, is you're just forced to think, okay, let me create a wheel, let me create a car, like, you know. Um, and so that partnered with my dad then remarried and had a stepmom who was very kind of into design, always had design magazines around. She had an incredible eye and just would kind of DIY her own projects, wallpaper and fabric in the bathroom, all of that. And all of that was very traditional. All of that was, I mean, we're talking Renaissance art, a lot of toile, a lot of intense florals, a lot of like Scalamandre vibes. And so that's kind of how I grew up in design. And I then started my company in Boston and New York, and there's a lot of design like that in Boston and New York. There's a lot of florals, there's a lot of toile, there's a lot of, you know, old school, traditional, classic design, which I love. And then I moved to LA, where I'm from. I mean, I moved back. And in LA, everyone wants California modern, white oak, boucle. It's shifting a little bit. But that was really hard for me, because on the East Coast, I did get to do, a more modernized version of what I had grown to love. And in LA, I don't get to do that at all unless I have an East Coast client here that's, purchasing a second home here. It's like that I don't getting to choose Welt is like a rare treat for me. So, and so for me, I've always been tied to how was it in the 1400s and the 1700s? And, from the beginning of time, when humans had time to create, when they had time to carve marble blocks and create statues, and that was true design and art, that feels authentic to me. In today's day and age, it's all fast, quick ship furniture, fast furniture. It's a lot of that. And even though, we do a ton of custom, um, it's still, people create sofas and sectionals with a lot less detail than they did back then. And so for me to navigate the authenticity, I'm always tying back to, in some little way in my work, classic design elements of real materials. And I always use this argument. And if a client asks me, well, is this too trendy right now? Is this marble too trendy or something? And I'm like, well, it's still in Versailles right now. And it's still okay 400 years later. So you'll be fine for the next 10 years and the next 40 years. And so that's kind of, it's a joke, but it's also a serious driving component is, was this relevant 400 years ago? And if it's still relevant, then it's still going to be true in design. And so, yes, of course, we'd still do trendy things and things that are in this moment, but I really try and focus on, especially when it comes to kitchens and bathrooms and molding and millwork, that we're tying it to what has always been classic and true that has never really gone out of style.
Isn't that interesting as well? Because when it comes to kitchens in particular, this idea of how kitchens are advancing, and by the way, I'm going to back up for a second. I'm a native Angelino. LA is home for me. I'm in Tulsa now, but LA is always home for me.
Yeah.
Grew up in the Valley, but most recently lived in Manhattan Beach. We lived there for 15 years. And watching the proliferation of the Cape Cod mod, the white box with blue accent
Mhm.
was just kind of nauseating, to be perfectly honest with you, especially after, the beach cities, which were built on these these beach bungalows that were built for all the GIs returning and the engineers at TRW and all of
Yeah.
the engineers that were coming in. But I'm wondering too if that's starting to change a little bit, uh, because the industry's changing a little bit. And I want to cut to. So, oh, sorry, let me finish the thought. So, with kitchens in particular, this idea of the butler's pantry and the scullery as a main part of what a traditional kitchen would look like. And, wet bars coming back. They haven't been putting wet bars in LA homes, I want to say, since the 70s and
Yeah.
80s, you know what I mean? But they're back.
Yeah, they're back.
And that must speak to your desire to tap into that traditional vibe.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think more and more you're seeing it across the country of people integrating more classic designs into their homes, which is great. And I think, I was on a quick call yesterday for a panel I'm going to be on at High Point Market, and it was about, the furniture landscape right now and sustainability and all of that and how it's true now luxury design is really shifting away from anything that is inauthentic and more authentic. We want real wood. We don't want just veneer. We want real travertine, not just a porcelain that looks like travertine. And so we're kind of going back full circle and to what we used to do. I think there was a short time frame in there in the great scheme of history where we were doing these, and we still are, but like quartz countertops and the man-made and the builder grade and everything's white and just turnkey and what happened was that was really popular for 10, 20 years, but ultimately it doesn't feel real. It just feels so artificial and you feel the lightweightness of the materials. And so people are now beginning to turn towards those realer, heavier materials if they can't afford it. And the other funny thing too is for the past 10 years of my career, if someone didn't want marble or quartzite or couldn't afford it, we were doing quartz. And, we never did porcelain because porcelain has, chips a lot easier. In the past 2 years, in the past 3 years, I haven't touched quartz. And if anything, we do now the marble with the tough skin sealer film, or we do porcelain that is a lot more authentic looking because people are looking for a more realistic look and something that's tied to, the earth and what really exists out there. So even though that is artificial still in its material, we are now at least slowly shifting away to more realistic materials. Um, and again, going back to not just history, but also earth and like real raw material.
As it relates to interiors, 100%. I think it's interesting too. You had mentioned High Point and prepping for a panel there, and one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today is your role at High Point. I have a couple of questions for you, starting with um, you are a style spotter this year. What does that mean to you? And back to this idea of authenticity, I will preface it by saying, one of the things that I rail about every year, at the end of a year and at the beginning of the year, is all the lists that come out. Here are the top 10 things you're not going to see in this year, and here's what you're going to see this year, and it's all BS. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's it's a stylistic choice or decision. I remember last year hearing, "Oh, you're not going to see boucle anymore," because it's like, look, boucle is like laying on a cloud. You're always going to have boucle.
Yeah.
You're always going to have it if that's what people want.
Yeah.
So, as a style spotter, and High Point is so big and there's so much to see, what does that mean to you? And how do you approach that with that same level of authenticity as to define trends that work for you and separate like the wheat from the chaff and separate the trendiness of certain things? How do you approach that role?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a really full circle answer, but for what I love being a style spotter because, obviously you get to see what's coming out and what's new, and that's very exciting and get to kind of curate that. But also, it was really exciting for me this year because there was a lot of designs that came out that again were tied to real materials or classic design or um, more historic design from like Italy, for example. Even if it's the 1970s, I mean, Italy was incredible during the 1970s and 1980s for design. And so for me, when I got to look at kind of the launches from all the different manufacturers and vendors, there was a lot of great new pieces out there that really did feel authentic for me. And I think the reality is too, which I see at High Point every year, is there's those pieces that we as designers love and are so cool and we've never seen it before. And that's so important because as a designer, I have seen pretty much everything and which is fine for all of my clients. But when it comes to my own home, for example, it takes forever to finish because I need something that I've never seen before, which is usually on live auctioneers or even Facebook Marketplace or like a random thing on Etsy that there's like one in the world left of. And for me, that's authentic because I don't want to ever see it before because I see everything every day. But also at High Point, you do see, yeah, the boucle accent share and all of that, which is less exciting for me, but I always have to look at because I know a lot of my clients want that. And to the point about boucle, I think again, shifting to real materials, The shift that we're seeing with boucle is boucle, part of it is out, part of it is in. And the part that's out, I think, is the polyester boucle. And the part that's coming in is the real wool or, alpaca, like real boucle. And that will never go out of style completely. Like that's always going to be in because that's a real authentic material. As opposed to the polyester boucle, less so. It's that same, I don't even know who the wholesale manufacturer is, but it's that same ivory boucle that like West Elm, they all, it's like a wholesale fabric that you've seen at Target. They all have the license for it. And I think that although consumers don't realize it, that's the one they're over, because it is the same. And so looking more towards those authentic materials. And so High Point is kind of both for me. It's like I have one side that's like, oh, I've never seen anything like that before. That solves a lot of problems for me. That's amazing. That's a great way. I've never thought of doing a tuft that way. I've never thought of doing a contrast piping that way, whatever it is. And then there's the other side of me that's like, okay, clients are going to definitely like this accent chair in their living room, or this is a great solve for this. And it's like, there's beautiful pieces, but as a designer, you're always like 10 years a little bit ahead of what is actually selling right now. And so it's kind of a little bit of both of that when I go to a showroom, um, I'm not the designer who goes slowly. I'm a millennial, so I'm usually online based. And so like that's how I kind of take in information. So when I go through the showrooms, I'm like, quick, quick, quick. I'm like, yep, okay, I've already seen that. I've already seen that. I've installed that, done that. Da, 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 da. Okay, this is new. This I haven't seen before, or this is a new way to do something. And so that's kind of what I really like to look for is just innovative and new ways to do things because with every project, there's always something you have to solve for. It could be that, like, I don't know, the molding trim sticks out past whatever the countertop, and there's no way to do it without an ugly or the schluter or whatever it is. And like, are there better ways to do things? And that's the amazing part of the internet is like, and then again in High Point too with furniture is like what are new ways to do things? I mean, I don't know how many interior designers there are in the world, but there's a lot, and we're all doing things. And I have a Pinterest board, a private Pinterest board that's just solutions. It's titled solutions. And anytime, whatever I'm searching for, it could be anything, and I see something that's a little bit unique and off the beaten path that like is a weird way to do an angled weird window with drapes or something like that, I just save it to that board because at some point I'm going to have a 1960s home in LA that we're renovating that has something funky and like the typical solutions don't work. And so I love High Point for that reason, obviously on a more furniture basis and decor, because you do get to see different ways of doing things. And I love how to see how they've styled it too, because um, you get to see pieces in a completely different way than, when you're sourcing, ultimately, you are thinking about the room cohesively. But the way I start, obviously, is focusing piece by piece. Okay, I need to find accent chairs. Okay, now, like, let me find the sofas. Let me find this. And then I'm making it together and seeing what's working. And it's really refreshing to go into, a showroom and see how they did it and how they used pieces together. It's all the time. One of the biggest battles I face all the time is finding a dresser that's wide enough, like a wide, proper dresser in these giant homes that they're building. And guess who? The only company who makes wide dressers is RH. And I hate when I have to go to a client and I'm like, here's your selection of 6 RH dressers you can pick from because no other company is making them 100 inches or wider. And so or we can do custom. And like, depending on the project, half clients love to do custom and other half are like, I don't want to do custom dresser. That's just not what I'm into. And so, and then you go into a showroom at a High Point, and of course, you see 2 chests side by side flush, and you barely notice that it's technically not one dresser, So there's little things like that, right? Where like it's the simplest thing in the world, right? But you're reminded of just different ways to place and treat furniture and then relay that and curate that for people who especially might be their first time at High Point of like, where do I start and where do I begin? And last year was my first time at High Point. And I wasn't overwhelmed by any means. I was excited and I was energetic and I had so much fun and I met so many people, but I was never overwhelmed, probably because I'm sourcing all day long. So I had seen it, and because we've gotten so great with technology, with photos online, the chair looks like the chair. It is. And I'll sit in things for comfort and things like that, but I really felt excited and energetic about it. And just this great chance to escape from the day to day for a quick second and be reminded why, you're in interior design. Because when you are a designer and you are caught up with the builder doesn't listen to you, or the clients decide to do a low 5-inch baseboard molding instead of an 8-inch molding, which is what happened this morning. And you're just so in it and you're like, why am I doing this? This sucks. And then you go and you're like, oh, okay, we're all in this misery together a little bit. And oh, there are beautiful pieces and there is so many wonderful things and there are so many innovative things that we're filling these homes with across the country. And this is why I do it. And it just kind of brings you back to why you're doing it, which is how I felt last time. And I really need that this time again to feel that. And then to be able to share that and share your creations and what you think is the next thing based on authenticity is just an incredibly wonderful and powerful thing to do.
It's interesting listening to you speak. You have a very, very interesting, unique, and smart approach to the business. I think it's fascinating, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. And a couple of things that I picked up on that I want to ask you about and maybe drill down on a little bit. Your booklet example is really, really good because in all of those articles, and I never thought, look, I'm a journalist, I'm not a designer, and I never
Yeah.
really thought about it. It's not the material itself. It was the origin of that particular material. And they should have said that.
Yeah.
I don't think the narrative in our industry really finds its way through the channel. And I think because anti-social media, and I call it that all the time because I think it is, um, it only gives you snapshots.
Yeah.
And this idea of materiality, color, and style. And you had also mentioned RH. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't understand why RH is the one that people kick and try to beat down all the time. It is what it is.
Yeah.
They have they have things and furnishings and lighting and materiality and style that there are people who want that, which
Hmm.
is great. It should
Yeah.
be a solution for the design. And I'm not saying that you're beating them down. I think your perspective was fantastic. But I think that, Target, like most people in high style and design don't want to go to Target. But you know what? You may find some accessories there that fit a motif and fit into a design style that moves the design conversation forward. Doesn't mean
Like
you design.
photo shoot today.
What's that?
Like this photo shoot today.
For
So
accessorizing,
lot of
right? You'll just, yes, I'm
it.
right there with you. Exactly. So totally. How do you how do you differentiate that from your role as style spotter? Because the role of style spotter is to find things, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, I'm curious, but as I see it, it's to find things that speak to your aesthetic, your ethos, your style, your perspective, your historical approach, things that speak to you, right? But you have, if you do the math just doesn't work. And I get your millennial perspective on sourcing and doing it digitally. And I love that. I think it's fantastic. But when you hit the ground, you have X amount of showrooms by X amount of days, by X amount of hours in the day. You can't, High Point in particular, you can't hit them all. How do you prep? How do you prep for, and look, we're recording this a few weeks prior, but by the time folks are listening to this, there's about a week before High Point. How do you prepare for High Point?
Um, I last time I was on the plane, and on the plane I went through like the High Point Market website, and I just went through all the showrooms. I think I knew 85% of all the companies. So I just kind of prioritized all. I mean, I think last year I went to like 65. I went to a lot, but I'm also quick. Um, and I kind of went through what I knew I wanted to see. This year I'm approaching things a little differently, which is I am more kind of looking for niche, again, solution, like companies that will help me with solutions. So I'm going to look at some wholesale fabric companies more off the beaten path, like that are, not just the main ones, but like the ones that are more wholesale that are great for like drapery, for example, because, when you need 60 yards, you want that cost per yard not to be too expensive. Also looking at more and window treatment hardware. So more kind of solution companies, companies that can do custom solutions, custom furniture, custom um, just a lot more custom solutions. Last year, I was more focused on like, let me see all the furniture that I use all the time or all the lighting, and let me go into all those. And that was kind of how I made that. And I think that was why I was less overwhelmed because it was everything I had seen before. And also, I'm so blessed in LA to have a lot of the same showrooms. So, and before that, I was in New York. So, like, between the two of them, it's like I have seen a lot in person. Um, and so this year I'm definitely focused on more like niche and more off the beaten path. And so my kind of recommendation is to focus on the places first that you use the most and also just make a quick plan of like what's near each other. Um, I kind of stopped following my plan after day one, to be honest, and just kind of wandered. To me, I guess I don't find it overwhelming because I just see it as a mall and I know a good mall. I know how to shop a mall, right? So if like for me, and it's very similar to the Pacific Design Center, right? Which we have to go to like every week. So to me, I'm like up the escalator, down the escalator, this showroom, that showroom. So what's the difference between that and like going to, shops in a mall like Apple Store theory, then you go to this place. So, so to me, that was kind of how I tackled it. But what I realized on the first day, I went to, I think, one panel on the second day, and I was like, ooh, I love the panels. And so I really prioritized the panels and then did showrooms in between that. I loved the panels more than anything because that is how you can just learn for designers that are further along in their career, that are older, that have different perspectives and different perspectives on topics you want to understand. And I just, to me, it was like, this is like, it's like graduate school for interior designers in like an hour, It's like you can just talk to people who've been where you have been before. And so I say always like make a quick plan the first day of what your priority spaces are, but like just kind of, I mean, everything's in separate buildings, right? So you just kind of you end up wandering in that area, and then I just don't even end up really using the map because I just went to each building and then I just kind of based it off the panels. Um, and then that way you're just kind of having fun and wandering with it. But that's kind of my process anyway. Some people are way more type A than me and are making a list and like, here's this number, and then we'll do this, and then we'll break for lunch. I'm kind of like, I went at it solo. I took some quick snapshots of and then I just went. Um, and so to me, it was just really fun. This year, it's going to be on my birthday, actually. And my husband was like, oh, if you're going to be like, on your own in like North Carolina on your birthday. And I was like, actually, that sounds like the perfect birthday. I can just go in between showrooms. I don't have to talk to anyone. I don't, my kids aren't here. I get to stay in a hotel room alone. I was like, this literally is a dream. And so I think figure out what works like for you and how your brain is. For me, at first I made a plan and then I just had fun with it and walked around and I haven't even made a plan this year. I know where I want to go, but again, I'm just gonna like just look at the panels and base my schedule around that for where I go. And I think that's kind of a good way for me at least to tackle it.
I love that you brought up the panels.
Mhm.
So I produce I create the programming, the majority of the programming for the West Edge Design Fair every year.
Amazing.
And every year there are 10 panels.
Hmm.
And sometimes I don't want to say that I struggle with this, but it is getting more challenging to find what designers really want to hear. It's always challenging, because you don't want to get too small.
Hmm.
You don't want to get too big. Living in Southern California, the most prolific topic at the moment is wildfires, rebuilding, tariffs, right?
Hmm.
Last year and the year before, it was AI and AI's effect. It was what's coming down the pike in the industry. Are there going to be tariffs? And based on who wins the election in November, that's going to define, what supply chain and product availability is going to look like. So much changes year over year. What is it that you feel you need to learn more about now? And what panels are you most excited about for High Point?
Um, I haven't looked yet. Do that on the plane right there.
Oh, really? So that's a last minute thing. That's not necessarily, you will plug that in advance, like right before.
Yeah. At least for, I mean, I'm prepped for my panels, but for the panels that to see what I want to go to, I literally do it on the plane. And honestly, that just comes down to the fact that we're a small team and I'm like client heavy until I have that free time to sit down on the plane and connect to Wi-Fi. Um, yeah, it's been a really crazy past 2 years. And I still think AI is a very relevant conversation, especially as it's changing so rapidly. And I think a lot of designers should really use AI more and more. It's a great tool and only a tool, and you have to kind of understand its limits. And then yeah, this year, tariffs are one thing. That's obviously that's real time. Like as of today, we're like trying the amount of work I have to do this week and orders I have to put in before everything goes up on Monday. Yeah, it's like late nights. And the fires are it's still very early um in that I mean, they're still just like either remediating or doing clean, debris cleanup. But I think overall, we are facing in interior design things that we've never faced before, and at a grand impact. I think what I love panels for personally isn't necessarily the content of the actual panel, but to me, hearing designers, especially designers that are, 20 years ahead of me, hearing them from a real human perspective in like an intimate room, especially if it's like TV designers. I went to a panel last year. It was a celebrity panel, like celebrity behind the scenes interior designers. And it was awesome. It was like therapy for 2 hours because it was, you just realize that like you could be so fancy and so, like you're on top of the world and like you're still struggling with the same stuff that you always do and the same work-life balance and at the end of the day it does come down to you. It's like there was a designer there who was like she had a color collection and she was like in her bathrobe at like midnight mixing the colors in her bathroom like and that was on her. She was the only one who could do it and that was the time she could do it and it was like wow, that is so authentic again. That is so real because unfortunately, yeah, that is when it happens because during the day you're problem solving, you're like, clients are calling, you're checking on job sites, you can get some sourcing in, but usually it's, not until late at night when the kids are in bed that you can actually think about like how you're gonna approach a specific problem or think about something more intensely or do the actual creation of something that is so important. And when I used to work for a very large firm in LA 15 years ago, it was the same situation. It's like I would drive by her house late at night and like she was still, the office lights were still on. And it was like she was still working because that was when she could design her lines with her fabric lines and things like that. And so I think that behind the scenes authenticity is so important, especially with social media. You know, we all show up on Instagram and we're like, today I'm going to talk about how to choose the right paint color. And it's like, honestly, it happens sometimes in my car and I look at my paint deck and I'm like, this one will work with this. Okay, order this one. Tell the painter. Like it's not, it's not always all like laying it out beautifully and like, okay. And it's not sometimes. And so for me to hear that from like leaders in interior design that I consider leaders, is like so refreshing and to understand we all are human. We're working in a very, very, very personal. I mean, home is everything. Home is everything to our clients. They're taking the most money they've ever made in their life and they're putting it and they're trusting you with it. It's stressful. There's so much liability and there's so much detail. And there's no other industry like it. And it is a really high stress industry. And so it's so, for me at least, refreshing to hear people's different perspectives on that as it comes to being a behind the scenes interior designer, as it comes to managing your firm, to dealing with employees embezzling money, whatever it is, that's crazy stuff that happens that clients don't know about is so refreshing because most design teams are between 2 to 10 employees big. And like, that's a very personal team. There's a lot that goes on there. There's a lot of politics. There's a lot of relationships, friendships. And so there's clients, and that's a big part of day to day. There's a whole other part of interior design that clients don't even know about that's just the minutia. And sometimes they do find out about it. And that's when you're like, please just stay in your zone over here because you don't want to know what really happens over here at all. And so for me, that's the best part is just being able to learn and that's going to keep changing. And that's, I also listen to podcasts too all the time and just try and learn from different people and how they approach things. Because that's the other thing is because it's such a personal industry and firms are so small, everyone's doing things a little different. And there's so many design softwares and there's so many invoicing softwares and there's so many ways to do things. And I'm always optimizing and thinking of better ways to do things. And I'm learning from other people because it's not, I'm not working when I used to work for a huge company, there was like everything set in stone. But when it's you and your team of three and you're just like at the end of the day, like, wow, today was bad. What needs to change right now? And that doesn't happen at larger companies. Um, but also there isn't so much customization in larger companies. So I think all of that really comes down to like hearing people just speak. And it's like almost like, yeah, it's really like classes for me is what panels are. Um, and so as much as we can match that up to what's going in the real world, I think is extremely helpful.
Yeah, be curious and be a lifelong learner, right?
Oh, always. Yeah.
It's interesting though, in listening to you speak because there's a lot of things to take into consideration now. And I'm just finishing up an episode of the show, and I was writing a bit about creativity
Mhm.
and how it's hard for any creative, you as a designer, me as a journalist and a writer, to be creative when you're under a constant level of stress. And that stress is caused just as it relates to the industry right now,
Mhm.
and we're talking about High Point in advance of High Point. But, when Mitchell Gold, Bob Williams ceased to operate, and there were a couple other manufacturers who stopped manufacturing, and now politically speaking, we're looking at changing our economy from a service economy, trying to make it a manufacturing economy again. That doesn't really work for a lot of different reasons. That's something that's got to get unkinked over time. But you've got supply chain, you've got tariffs, you've got the legal issues. There's 3 legal cases right now that I'm following, that I'm talking about on the show. One is the Aaron Judge versus Drew Designs LLC, which is a contractual issue in Florida. There's the Donald Judd versus Clements, which is a dupes case that's going through the legal system. There's Giffords v. Scheel, which is a another IP case, which is related to stylistic presentation via social media, which all three of these cases are currently winding their way through the legal system, which have direct and pretty significant implications for the design industry. And I feel like, to your point, going to these panels, going to these events, being curious, being a lifelong learner, and staying on top of the industry, like we were talking about AI. Listen, I've said this before, but designers who don't use AI are not going to lose their clients because of that. They're
Yeah.
going to lose their clients to other designers who are adept at using AI to make their process more streamlined, to make
Mhm.
them faster, stronger, more agile, more nimble. That's where it gets really interesting. And so this idea of being creative segues into going to an event like High Point. And I'm really curious about this because I was recently at KBIS and I had spoken to a lot of people. And when I go to these events, I'm busy from the moment the eyes open till the moment I lay my head on the pillow and the eyes shut. There's just busy, busy, busy. And how you prepare for an event like this is interesting too. You know, Going to a 3-day event where you're walking 3 or 4 miles a day, where you're not eating on a regular basis, where you're not getting the same amount of sleep, where you're maybe drinking a little too much, and throughout the day, all of these things affect one's creativity and one's ability to perform and to learn and to take in information. Silly question. What shoes are you taking? And how many pairs of them do you take? Do you prep for an event like this? Like, do you get some miles in a couple of weeks or leading into it? Do you hydrate before? I know this may sound a little silly, but it's actually, as a runner, training is everything. Like, you have to train if you want to perform. And these events kind of tax us emotionally, mentally, physically. How do you prep?
Well,
Or do you?
so, I mean, I think as probably half of interior designers, I have ADHD. So every day I'm not hydrated enough or eating enough or peeing enough every day. My body's just used to it. Um, so, and think about, I mean, I think for a lot of smaller interior design firms too, I mean, an install day and a photo shoot day is the same thing. I mean, you look at your Apple Watch after an install, you've walked like 8 miles in the same house. You kind of have eaten a couple bites of your Uber Eats delivery you got for everyone, like you're just in it. So, for me, that's every day of my life. But and then for shoe, like last year, I'm most comfortable in like sandals. And so as long as I have flats or sandals, for the panels, when I'm speaking on a panel, I put on heels and then I take them off right after. Um, Find a beautifully upholstered chair and sit down and change my shoes. Um, and so I'm fine with it. It doesn't faze me. And I actually, honestly, it's a more calming thing for me because I get to shop and walk around and talk to people. For me, actually, day to day is more exhausting because, I mean, today, like the photo shoot we're about to have, which will probably go until 6. I mean, that's nonstop moving. Let me move the sofa over. It's not the right angle. Let me take 2 bites of my food. And then I still have to like answer all my client emails at the end of the day and like actually do some design and catch up. And to your point on the editorial questions earlier, it's like I do have a love-hate relationship with photo shoots specific to editorial. It's so much fun as a designer. It also sucks because I am gone from 12. I'm on the Zoom, my phone, I've gotten 12 missed calls and 5 of them are from clients. And like it's like, oh God, like, it's a lot and it's stressful. As opposed to if I'm at High Point in a showroom, I can answer a call from a client and I don't feel as like behind. And the same thing that happened today on a photo shoot. I really can't take any calls or emails today because I need to be constantly making sure that the shot is right and working with the photographer. Um, And so for me, I actually find it less stressful because I get to shop and look and I still can check my emails and I can still sit down and like there are the food carts everywhere. And so to me, if anything, I find it fun um, and don't find it draining at all. But I also lived in New York for, 4 years, so I'm used to walking a lot. And, um, and I also have two young kids, so to me, this is like a vacation minus the beach, basically. So my goal is to I focus on the panels and where I want to go. And then I just kind of let the day, it's hopefully it'll be beautifully and sunny like it was last year. And it's nice, it's quiet, quiet for the most part. You walk around, you go, you get to chat with people, um, versus like running into a meeting and you have no matter what happened right before the meeting with the client, you have to be on and happy. You could have like the worst phone call and then something's going awful in another job, and you'd be like, okay, let's go look at tile samples together. And then you have to like put the mask on and then you like leave and then you go back to your phone and you're like, sorry, I shouldn't curse, but like you're like everything is falling apart while I've been gone. And so for me, high points, like I actually in the car was driving and I was like, I literally can't wait to go. It's gonna be like such a treat. It's like my kind of vacation where I can work, but I'm also on vacation. So, but for people who haven't been before, just bring comfortable shoes. If you are on a panel or doing something, bring heels you just change into for that hour or 2 hours. Um, Maybe next year I'm going to try prioritize promotions and like furniture lines and collections. That will be a very different schedule because that'll be scheduling meetings and like that'll be a different side of High Point I haven't done before. But from the like as a visitor going through, bring a water bottle, utilize the food carts. Don't try and wait for a better food option. There will not be one. It's just what's there is there, and you should eat at the time. Um, and uh, and just, oh, cell phone charger, because there's outlets obviously everywhere, but it's going to die so quickly. And then you can't get on the shuttle and then you can't book an Uber back to your hotel. Yeah.
Those are good calls. That's good. That's a good list. That's solid. I appreciate that. Um, so a couple of things as we wrap this up.
Mhm.
First of all, I so appreciate the time. I would love to follow up with you after
Mhm.
because I would love, I'm sure that I'll see your spotted styles. I'm sure I'll see everything that you do, and I'm really looking
Yeah.
forward to that. But I'd also love to follow up with you about the experience. And I'm curious, is High Point on your list of every year once, twice? What's the frequency for this show for you?
Right now it's once a year. That might change as if we start doing a product line or if time allows me to go twice. But right now, once a year, I would love to go twice a year. I just couldn't this year, but I might be able to go again in the fall.
And then what's your accommodation situation? Do you go do hotels? Do you rent a house with your team? I've heard of some doing that. I've heard some like rent a trailer and actually do an RV kind of thing, which I think is an interesting idea. But how do you do it?
I just do a hotel, and I pick a nice hotel knowing I'm gonna have to Uber no matter what, and just I think last year I really like I'm part of a couple interior design Facebook groups and I just searched High Point and like kind of read where people stayed and what was good. And so I did that and just kind of figured it out that way. And so I always do a hotel, just easier for me.
Love it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Listen, Victoria, this was fantastic. I really appreciate this. And with your permission, I'd love to circle back with you and chat with you after the fact so we can talk about what you spotted and what you liked.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds amazing.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victoria. Love this. Thank you to my incredible partner sponsors, TimberTech, Pacific Sales, and Design Hardware, amazing companies and great friends to the trade. So please make sure you give them an opportunity on your next project. Thank you for listening, subscribing to the show, and sharing with your colleagues who you think might be interested. If not already subscribing, please do so. Consider it anyway, so that you receive every new episode automatically the moment it's published to your podcast feed. Please keep those emails coming. convobydesign@outlook.com, and follow the conversations on Instagram at convobydesign with an X. Until next week, thank you for sharing this time together. And until the next episode, be well, stay focused, and now that it has arrived in earnest, try to rise above the chaos.